start. Now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Boom, boom. We're back, people. We are back. Finally, football is back on for Liverpool, and they have just finished their first game of the pre-season. 4-2 victory against Karlsruher from Germany. We're going to dive into a couple of little bits and bobs. I don't want to make this too full on, if I'm being totally honest with you. People in the chat, if you're watching this, comment section, whatever, let me know. What did you think, obviously, of the performance? What did you think of certain players? Obviously, we got to see Szoboszlai, we got to see McAllister, and a couple of youngsters as well who caught the eye. Obviously, we'll get into them. Scanlon, obviously, probably being the main one for me anyway. We obviously got to see Ben Doe, Bobby Clark, McConnell as well. Decent performance from the Reds. I think quality told. If I'm being honest with you, it was very reminiscent of many a performance we've seen from last season, in terms of the way that we played, patterns of play and stuff like that. It was just certain players were in different positions. Obviously, we'll get into that in a second. But all in all, Liverpool got the victory, first game of the pre-season. So, it's one of those kind of things. But before we even dive into that, before we even get into that, guys, please make sure you are smashing that like button. Please make sure you share. Please make sure that you subscribe. I beg, please, man. Please, please, please. But obviously, Liverpool running out 4-2 winners. Not really. It's difficult. It's the first game of pre-season, so I'm not going to sit here and act like, yeah, we need to unpack everything and blah blah blah. As much as I'm gonna take a deeper dive into it, at the same time, it's still a little bit like it's the first game of pre-season, so I don't really feel like whether we had won or lost. Obviously, to lose would have just been embarrassing because of the team that we were facing, but ultimately, without being disrespectful, it is the first game of pre-season, so it was probably just more about where are the guys at? Where are they at in terms of their fitness levels? At the beginning of this preseason, are some players really lacking? Sometimes you do play that first game and the team are just so far off, and you're not playing against a tough team. So then you start thinking, okay. I'm not saying that bodes well. I'm not saying that that's going to mean anything. Again, it's the first game of preseason, so it is difficult to really judge anything. And I don't think I'm not here to judge the first game either. Like, I always allow that first game, really up until maybe we get to like the end of July, beginning of August. That's where I start looking at you thinking, okay, kind of need to stop seeing poor performances, silly little mistakes and little bits like that, better patterns of play and except whatever it may be for any team. I think that's when you start to really focus on, some of the performances, new players obviously coming in, etc., all of that jazz. But obviously, in regards to Liverpool's game against Karlsruher, you got 2 goals from Diogo Jota, Gakpo, Nunes scoring. We'll get on to Nunes in a second. We'll get on to Nunes in a second. Very, very funny man. Very, very funny man. But yeah, like I said, all in all, really what I was probably most interested in, if you watch my preview before the game, one of the main things that I was really looking out for was really just seeing kind of some of the youngsters. If I'm being totally honest with you, we speak about some of these youngsters in terms of how good we think they are or how bad we think they are, whatever it may be, whatever side you're on. So it was kind of good to see players like Scanlon. I was very interested because he's a left back by trade, but he was playing a lot further up, in the game, in itself. But we'll just take a look here as to how we lined up for the game. Obviously, Kelleher in goal. I was happy with that because that's who I wanted to see playing in goal. We played a relatively strong kind of lineup for that first half, if I'm being super honest with you. Andrew Robertson, Van Dijk, Konate, Bradley was playing at right back. Then you got Szoboszlai making his first start for the team, Trent, Bobby Clark in the middle, and then Diaz, Darwin Núñez, and Mohamed Salah. I think when it comes to like the options, I don't know if you guys were happy, so I'll put it up again for you. I don't know if you guys were happy with the lineup or if you wanted to maybe see something a bit more different. I know obviously in my one I didn't have the Salahs, the Nunes, and the Diaz in there. I wanted to see, Ben Doak potentially start, you know. So obviously, I don't really mind Trent. I didn't really want to see start. I don't need to see anything. Again, obviously, what I want to see and what what Jurgen Klopp wants to see and what he's trying to gain out of the preseason are two different things. Obviously, we're just fans, so I'm just trying to see something a little bit different. Do Liverpool play differently? Are we going to set up differently? Is it going to be the same old? And if I'm being super honest with you, it was the same old. Like, you know, um, yeah, it was the same old. I can't really go much further than that. It was like watching a game from last season against a poorer team that we should beat, but ultimately we obviously ended up beating them anyway. But it was one of those games where you're just like, yeah, the quality told. And then as per usual, like a lot of last season, and we've obviously continued it this season, the teams will always have their good bits. And when they have their good period of time, we just look so vulnerable. Like that's something that I noticed. Again, it's the first game. So I'm trying my hardest to hold back what I really think. If I was really taking a deep dive into a game like this, but ultimately there were little bits that I did see, and I was just like, it's the same old Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? Is it nothing that I saw in this game made me think, oh, okay, that was really, really good. That we look a bit different. I can see maybe when we have all of our, first teamers out, we're gonna, nothing really there. But of course, we've got more, plenty more games, to come. Where should we start? I think let's start. Obviously, Conor Bradley played in that right back position. But if you watch the game properly, and I know many of us did, he was kind of playing in that Trent position. The position that Trent was obviously taking up at the back end of last season. I found that very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Does that mean, is that something to potentially look out for? Obviously, Trent starting in the middle. He played it in that kind of in that sixth position, by himself there, almost that deep line kind of playmaker role, the guy who's picking up the ball off of the centre backs. And then that kind of allowed, for Conor Bradley to then come in, and play alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold, at times in the game. And, Conor Bradley, he played all right. Obviously they gave him a 6.6 here. I felt like he wasn't noticeable enough for me to be like, oh my goodness, he was so off it, or he was really poor. Yeah, it was okay. He was just okay in that kind of regards. But it was interesting to see Trent in that position, because it's so like, this is why I say what we want and what Klopp wants are always two different things. What we want is a new defensive midfielder. We want this guy. We want that guy. Florentino Luis. We want, I don't know, Jet Decore, Andre Jadade, whoever, like Kefren Turams, the Gravenberchers, whoever. We're all talking about all of these midfielders that we want. These times, like Klopp's the type of guy that he'll be like, no, I'm good, man. I got Trent there. I'll play Conor Bradley at right back and boom, 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 or Joe Gomez there, or what. Like that's, I can see something like that easily happening. Like it's one of those things. I'm not saying it's definite. I'm still going to be of the belief that we will sign someone to play in that position, but I can see Klopp doing something. You guys know it, man. In the chat, you know how Klopp stays, man. We know how he stays. We know how he moves. He's just one of them type of, individuals. So, I'm not going to sit here and act like, that wouldn't be a thing. And again, Trent playing in that position, again, very interesting. I felt like it was different to the role that he plays when he was playing, towards the back end of last season, where he was like in that kind of, pivot position, obviously inverted fullback, whatever you want to call it. Because I felt like in those games, he just looked more of a threat because he was on the ball a lot more. He was playing those incisive passes and stuff like that. Whereas when he was in this sixth position, it was almost like it kind of held him back a little bit, if I'm being totally honest with you. Yeah, he got himself forward a little bit, played a couple passes here and there. Obviously, he's got so much quality on the ball. Those kind of things would always come out, anyway. But in a general sense, I was a little bit like, again, Trent was a little bit just like, he was just unnoticeable in that sense. Again, that's neither good or bad, to be honest with you. It just depends on what you're asking of him in that team. Again, his first game of preseason, maybe just put him there for the time being. It will change, later on. I'm convinced of that, or I'm hoping, should I say, that will happen. But that's something I did notice a lot about Trent, was that position that he played, him and Conor Bradley. Conor Bradley kind of playing his role that he played towards the back end, and him playing in that lone six position. I just felt like he was just there, just knocking the passes around, putting the ball, over to the left side or to the right side and stuff like that. He wasn't really the playmaker Trent that we all want to see. The guy who, when he's on the ball, he's dangerous and kind of stuff like that. Again, like I'll keep referring to this. It's the first game of preseason. Maybe as we get further along, players start picking up a bit more fitness. We start playing, the harder teams. Maybe that will change. I think we've got Leicester and potentially Bayern Munich or something like that coming up. So that might potentially change in terms of where Trent might play. And also, if we sign someone, that will probably also change as well. So all of these kind of little things. But again, these are just the little things that I noticed, during the game in itself. Diaz, interesting. Obviously, we've seen the news about Luis Diaz. People in the chat, let me know, what are you saying? Obviously, Fabrizio Romano came out anyway during the game to speak about it and say, yeah, Liverpool are not even considering, selling Luis Diaz, as well, not at that price that they were quoted to. Excuse me, they were quoted to offer, which is I think 50 million euros. So obviously, of course not. That's 40 odd million pounds. We paid, I think, just about that when we signed him. So of course not. Liverpool would never do that. They would easily be looking for double for someone like Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz, I think he's got a big season. I think again, if we're just talking about this game in itself, I thought, yeah, he was okay. Do you know what I mean? He was all right on that left hand side. He was the same old Diaz, to be honest with you. I didn't. There was nothing really more to realistically say. But if we're just looking at Diaz, in terms of the future and stuff like that, I do think he's got a big season coming ahead. I don't think he's as indispensable as I know some of you would like him to be, and maybe in some of you actually think he is. I think he's a player that, if a good bid was to come in, I can see that. I can see Klopp saying, yeah, not even Klopp. Let me just say that back. It might not even be Klopp. It will be more the owners saying, yeah, that's all right. Do you get what I mean? It will take Klopp really trying to convince him, kind of thing. Like, and I'm not saying you don't need to replace him, but it wouldn't be a major need for me, because I think that Diogo Jota is a way better player in that position. We saw with Jota today with his 2 goals. We saw with the movement of Diogo Jota. We saw how he plays, how he links up, with someone, like Cody Gakpo. For me, that was when I saw that first front three, obviously playing, this kind of front three for the for the first half. I thought, okay, cool. Let me see what you guys have got. And to be honest with you, I'm not that convinced. I've never ever been convinced, because I've always said Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez, they both like to occupy the same positions. They're 2 players. They're very similar in what they do, in terms of how they like to play. So to speak, quite isolated individuals, like to do things kind of on their own, and, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, when it did come to seeing them play, first game in preseason, but I wasn't impressed in the slightest. I felt like they were very, very just there. If I'm being totally honest with you, and you saw the difference between Gakpo, Jota, and Ben Doak as an example. Obviously, Salah will be there, but let's say Gakpo and Jota, you saw that relationship as opposed to the relationship between Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez. Doesn't really, I don't know. I've never ever thought it clicked. Never. Like, even when they first started playing together, I just used to think, nah, this ain't gonna work. Like, they're too dissimilar in what they need to do. Like, in terms of what Klopp is asking them to do, but they're quite similar in what they want to do. Both want to be on the ball, kind of thing, in terms of, getting themselves on the ball, whether it be Núñez getting in on the end of things, whether it be Darwin, whether it be Luis Diaz, picking up the ball and taking on 20 players, and then doing something to a shot or a pass or running inside and getting tackled, whatever it may be. Like, and they both like to run in off that left hand side. So it's like, okay, fair enough. We need to start playing more to Darwin Núñez's strength, and that was something again that I realized. But again, I'll keep saying it. It's only the first game. It's only the first game. Another player we'll take a look at is Szoboszlai. He was mostly on that right-hand side. Completed a lot of passes. I think it was over 40-odd passes. Good accuracy rate. I felt first half, if you had to ask me between him and Alexis, I'd say Alexis had a better game. He was more impactful in that game as opposed to Szoboszlai. I felt like Szoboszlai played it safe. Did his kind of thing, he was just cute and tidy in the middle. Again, that's not to say that I don't think he could potentially get better, but I would have thought in my brain the first time I see them, excuse me, the first time I see them, I would have thought it'd be the other way around, because, I've spoken so highly of Szoboszlai, everyone has really and truly, and Alexis McAllister, but I think it's because of the roles. Whereas I feel like when we look at Alexis McAllister's kind of heat map, we see it there. So you got Szoboszlai in that kind of wide right attack, that Henderson role, effectively. That's let's just call it that, even though Henderson is going, but that Henderson, role, I saw that there, and I was like, okay, fairs. And then obviously McAllister was more playing in that number 10 position. Maybe that's the position that Klopp potentially sees him in, playing just off the striker, because obviously the strikers like to move around, whether it be Jota, whether it be Gakpo. But I think it looks like, anyway, from what I saw, it looks like it would work better if you've got McAllister who's playing off of a Gakpo and Diogo Jota, because of the movement of both players. Both players like to drop deep, but they also like to move around. Whereas Luis Diaz isn't someone who's going to move around too much. Darwin Núñez, again, he becomes wasted when he drops deep and stuff like that. That's not his game. His game is he wants to be running in behind as opposed to dropping deep, having to pop it off, do this, do that. He don't want to do all of that. He wants to just, run in behind. Alexis McAllister would suit better if he was playing behind the Diogo Jotas and stuff like that. And we can see here with Jota's heat map, again, he came in the second half as well. He was just a busybody. Honestly, just a busybody. And his finishes were decent, man. I said before about Diogo Jota, for me, I'm a bit ruthless in that sense. Like, if you're always injured, I don't care how good you are. Do you know what I mean? It's like Thiago. I don't care how good you are. If you're always injured, you're not offering me anything. But if you can stay injury free, Thiago being a prime example, if he was to stay injury free, oh my goodness, Liverpool got a fantastic player, on their hands. Diogo Jota is the same thing. He's probably one of our most natural finishers. Maybe alongside Gakpo, maybe. In terms of just pure finishing, he just seems to have so many different finishes in his locker. And again, we saw that today in regards to the 2 goals that he got himself in stoppage time. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It is an interesting one with Diogo Jota. I do think him, Núñez, Cody Gakpo, I think all of them, they're all going to be fighting for, even Diaz as well. Let me know. They're all fighting for spots in the team. Let me know in the comments, guys, who would be your, if we play Chelsea, start the game, start tomorrow, let's say, or whenever this video comes out, let's say the next day we had to play Chelsea, who would be your starting 3? Do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people already are like, you know what? It's got to be Diaz, Núñez, and Salah kind of thing. And, that could potentially be what Klopp plays first game of the season. I have no idea. We'll wait and see, when that happens. But I've always been of the belief it has to be Cody Gakpo through the middle, Jota playing off that left-hand side, but also coming in a little bit, kind of filling in if we get back his the heat map here from the game, filling in these kind of roles, him and Gakpo kind of swapping out. I think they do that really, really well. And then obviously Mo Salah, on that right-hand side. But let me know what you guys obviously think in regards to who should play where, and then you can start putting in your Trents and whoever the DM is and all those kind of other positions. Even looking here at his heat map, let me take this banner off. Looking at the heat map from Cody Gakpo again, if you look at his heat map, that's Cody Gakpo. Yeah, that's his heat map. And I see Núñez's heat map. They're like 2 different players. Gakpo, Núñez. Gakpo, Núñez. Like 2 different players. Now, if you play to Núñez's strengths, you may see different results. But I keep saying it. And the thing is, everyone keeps coming up with excuses. I never seem to understand. If you're not going to play to the guy's strengths, then the reality is you're not going to see the best of this guy. Do you get what I mean? Even speaking of Núñez, obviously he got his goal. And I said I would come to this. He got his goal. Big up Núñez for that one. Boom, boom, boom. No problem. Yeah, first goal of the thing. Left foot as well. It was actually a decent little finish kind of thing. And I'm not going to out this person. They know who they were. They know who they are, sorry. They said it. They said it in a group chat. All of these shooting drills just for you to pass from 7 yards out. Like, why are you passing in this situation? It didn't even, it just made no sense whatsoever. And I was so baffled when he did it, because I was like, what? I started looking around. I was like, did he, you're just trying to come up with anything. And I said I was going to just take it easy. Do you know what I mean? I said, nah, this game, it was just one of them throwaway games. I'm not going to get on, unless I see something stupid, then I'm not gonna, necessarily get onto it too tough. But that just baffled me. Like, honestly, just baffled the hell out of me. Let me know in the comments, like, what did you think when you saw it? Like, obviously, like I said, he got the goal. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And he seems like he's just going to be one of those, like, he is just one of those kind of guys. Like, he will do something crazy, but then he'll get himself a goal potentially. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it made me laugh. Honestly, it did make me laugh, a little bit seeing that from Darwin Nunes, to be honest with you. But, it is what it is with Nunes, man. He's one of those players. He's one of those kind of guys, man. One of those kind of guys. Again, looking here at the lineup, just taking a look here. Anything else? Kelleher was all right, good with his feet as well. Pause. Konate, again, I keep maintaining that right centre back position. If we're going to play with the three, and we're going to actually use it as a three like we did at the back end of last season, keep saying it. I'm not comfortable with Konate being in that position. So quite a lot of times in the game where loose kind of control just looked uncomfortable. There was a moment, you guys probably remember, there was a moment in the game where, and I'm not trying to just pick out this point, but there's a reason, because I see this a lot from Konate. It isn't just of this game. You got the ball from Keller. There was no one around him. There was an attacker there. There was an attacker there, but not with enough time realistically to cause him too much pressure. You know what I mean? Just get the ball from open your body up, get the ball from the goalkeeper. You just need to pass it. That's all you need to do. Whether you pass it into the middle for whoever, or whether you pass it out wide right. The person out wide right, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Bradley at the time, but whoever it was, they were free. That's all he had to do. What does he go and do? He goes and lose the ball. They get possession. They're now looking dangerous on the attack, and boom, 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 boom. Again, better teams, they exploit that. Do that against the Manchester City, you're getting killed. Do that against Arsenal, you're getting killed. Manchester United getting killed. These type of teams, they'll kill you in them kind of moments. Heck, Brentford with a Tony and Mbeumo, them kind of, like these teams, Aston Villa, they'll kill you on the counter, bro. You need to be careful. You know what I mean? And again, that's just that one moment that he did. Overall, he was okay. But Konate is like that. Good defender. Always said it. Very, very solid defender. But Jesus Christ, like, he does really have these bozo moments, in his locker. But, again, like we say, it's just the first game of preseason. So, we move from there. But, one player I think I'm going to really highlight for me was Scanlon. Callum Scanlon. He's a left back by trade, but he played a lot further up in that game as the left winger, so to speak. Looked really, really good on the ball. Looked comfortable, when he was on the ball on that left hand side, especially with him on the left and Doak on the right. They were all complementing each other really, really well. He's got good turn of pace. There was a moment where I knew if there wasn't a covering defender, he would have beat. He tried to kick the ball and run, and I was like, "Ooh, you know what? If that other defender wasn't there, maybe he just didn't notice him. If he wasn't there, he would have beaten whoever that guy was, because that guy was definitely not catching him." So he's an interesting player. Obviously, we're kind of stacked on that left wing area. So whether he would have to just stay in at that left back position, but again, I liked what I saw from him. I really, really did. He only played, I think, about 11 minutes. 25 touches in that time. 18 accurate passes, 90% pass rate, 3 crosses, 1 on target. Like, you know what I mean? In that 11 minutes, I'm sure it was like 11 minutes that he played. In that time, he did look really, really comfortable. So, again, those are a couple of the players. Him, Ben Doak, Connor Bradley. Don't think he played that well, but he was just interesting to see his positioning, in the game, taking up that kind of Trent role. Tsimikas, he was just whatever. Gomez obviously came on. Yeah, I mean, the less said, the better. Yeah, I think that's kind of it in regards to the ones who are really caught my eye. I think Scanlon would be the one. Alexis McAllister was definitely another, and Gakpo and Diogo Jota. I think those 4 players, they're really the players who kind of caught my eye, in that game. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how things really develop, over the next few preseason games. Hopefully, no one gets injured and stuff like that. New players coming in, players leaving. It's just going to be interesting to see how things kind of unfold, and then what we then look like coming towards that first game, against Chelsea. But obviously, people, let me know in the chat, how did you feel about the game? Obviously, like I mentioned, it was our first game of pre-season, so let's not go too crazy. We'll save that for our second to last game, or whenever we get Leicester. I'm sure we got Leicester. Whenever that game kind of comes in, we'll start, unpacking all of that, and really hammering home, what we see and stuff like that. But let me know, who's your man of the match? Who caught your eye? Anything to improve upon for our next game? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm G, and that is Match Reaction done, and we are outie.